Hello, silver tubers. It is Mr. Zeke coming to you from the silver pouring bench. I am going to attempt to pour a classic style bar in a mold that I don't think I've poured yet. I found the mold and I don't know where it came from. I know I made it some time ago, but hang on just a second, I need to get my tongs. Okay, I'm back. I've got my tongs now. So, I don't know exactly how much this mold holds, but we're going to find out together. And I'm going to try and go through the whole process, except for cleaning the bar. I'm just going to go ahead and pour it, and then stamp it, and we will go from there. So first, the mold's warm. It's not glowing hot, but it's definitely warm, which is good, because to get a classic look, I definitely want a little bit of air pocket in it. So let's get this thing poured nice and even and slow. Alright, so we had enough silver there, and no schmutz on the top. That's good. So now, one of the things I've read about is that if you allow the silver to cool in the mold, then the molecules align instead of being scattered. If I quench it, then I'm going to get scattered molecules, and I don't get as strong of a bond, which means the silver will be a little bit softer. So I'm not going to quench this, and we are going to pause the video, move over to the stamping station, and we're going to stamp it while it's still warm. So hang on just a second. This is what happens when you read too much. Can you read too much? I don't know. But if you can, I definitely read too much. So hang tight. I'm just gonna dump this and move the camera over to the stamping station, which you'll have to pardon is an absolute disaster. So we're back, and the bar has not been quenched yet, so it is still hot, so I'm still going to wear gloves. But we're going to go ahead and stamp it while it's hot, and we're going to start with the Tree of Life stamp, and we're going to off-center stamp it like the vintage bars are, and I'm going to do it slightly lower. There's going to be a loud noise. Alright, so we got a very nice stamp there, which is what I was looking for. It's a little warm, so, but we got a very clear Tree of Life stamp. Ooh, that bar is warm. Yes, definitely warm. So now, what else do we usually see on one of those vintage bars of silver? Well, the word silver occurs on a lot of those. And so I'm going to use this aluminum stamping pad and hope I don't melt the rubber under. You know what? Hang tight. I've got a steel stamping pad. Alright, so now I have my piece of plate steel. And hopefully the silver doesn't heat through the steel, but we need to stamp. We're trying to recreate that vintage look on this bar, and so we're going to stamp silver on it. So let's, still using the gloves because it's definitely still warm. I'm going to bring the silver bar over here, and this might get a little awkward because my hands are going to be in the way as I hold the stamps, and I'm going to get rid of the big heavy welding glove that I use for my tongs. And I have a large set of stamps, and so, and I'm going to do the best I can to keep it straight, but we start with the letter S. Where you hide? There it is, S. Okay, and I'm going to try not to burn myself on the silver while I stamp it. So, there's S. And I can't touch the silver, so I can't line it up perfect, but I will do the best I can. S-I-L. S-I-L-V. Spacing is a little dicey. Ooh. S-I-L-V. What letter comes next? E. E. There we go. And lastly, we're going to need an R so that we know it's silver. So there, now we've got silver stamped on it. What else did they use to stamp on the bars? Well, the purity. I think the purity, I'm going to go ahead and use my standard 999 stamp, and I think I'm going to place it right above the Tree of Life. Just because it's convenient, and I've got to have space for the weight down below silver. So, because we want to keep this as authentic looking as possible. However, I have noticed a common thread amongst all those vintage collector bars that they're all scratched to Hades, and I'm really not wanting to get that vintage. So, let's take our Impress Art 999 Fine Silver, and we're just going to place that right above the Tree of Life. And now we have our purity. It's very small, but now we have the challenge of weighing it while it's still hot. So I'm going to get the scale. We're going to weigh it in troy ounces. So, got to get the scale set for troy ounces. And let's see. I'll grab it with the gloved hand. I'm going to do this quick. We've got 4.65 troy ounces. So, we're going to stamp with the large numbers for and the dot is always a punch that's been ground down. Point. And now 6. And I've seen them, you know, 4.6, 4.65. We're going to go out to the 6.5 point. 6. And lastly, 5. Make sure I'm holding that right. There we go, 4.65. And I've got this little stamp that I had made, and it's the smaller OZT, smaller stamps, OZT, and I'm going to put that right. I don't know if I'll make it. We'll give it a try. OZT, and at slight angle, because a lot of those vintage bars weren't, you know, they weren't perfect. They were refineries, and so they weren't overly concerned. So now that we've got all of the relevant details on it, now let's go ahead and quench it. So give me just a second, I'll be right back. Alright, so silver tubers, here is the final results. I laid out a couple of bars. I'm going to get a little, there we go, get a little closer. Here are a couple of bars that I've poured recently that I high polished and left minimally stamped, just the Tree of Life and the Purity. I haven't even put the weight on them. But they kind of are, there were two inspirations for this project. These have been polished with the Dremel. The inspirations, I keep watching Steady Stacking Silver show all these vintage bars, and there are some common themes in these vintage bars, and it always has sort of the refiner's mark and the purity, and then in big letters silver, and then in big, you can tell they weren't going for perfection with the hand stamps on the weights, and they're all odd weights. And there's always, a lot of times you can see just minor cooling lines, not radical cooling lines. And so I wanted to try and recreate that with this bar. Hit it with the Dremel just a little bit, left a little bit of the polish and the letters there, and did my best to recreate a vintage looking refinery bar. And so the back has that refinery look to it, where they don't mess with the back, they don't bother with it. It's still got some reflectivity to it because it is silver. You can see my finger there, but everything else is just left very commercialized, very commercial, very rough. And so there it is. There's my attempt at recreating a vintage silver bar. And so I appreciate everybody watching, and I hope, let's create an H. There we go. I hope everybody has a happy week this week. Cheers, Mr. Zeke coming to you with another project from the Silver Pouring Bench.